When did 20 years in prison not feel like enough? I used to work for a nonprofit that supported women transitioning out of domestic violence shelters. The hours were long, the stories were heavy, but I always believed in the mission. And we had an incredible CEO named Greg, who was the kind of man everybody trusted. He dressed like a retired camp counselor and had that kind of soft-spoken demeanor that made you feel instantly safe. He'd founded the nonprofit 2 decades earlier and built it from the ground up. People called him the soul of the place. He kept morale up even though we were constantly underfunded and working out of a cramped and outdated building. The building had a small changing room next to the supply closet, mostly used by staff after outreach shifts or community events. We all hated it. The tiles were warped and always slightly damp, no matter how much they were cleaned. It was a running joke among employees that the room felt cursed. Finally, after years of requests, the board approved a full renovation, and we were psyched. On the first day of demolition, a contractor accidentally cracked open a vent and noticed a cable threading into the wall. Curious, he traced it into the storage closet next door, where he found a false panel behind some shelving. Hidden in the wall were 6 small cameras. All of them had been aimed directly at the changing room. The renovation halted immediately, and the contractors called the police. I had just come back from a community drop-off when I saw uniformed officers walking briskly through the building, flanked by a tech team. Greg stood in the hallway looking pale and tight-lipped. He told everyone we were closing early due to an unexpected building code violation. By the end of the day, we knew it wasn't about code compliance. Every female employee received an email instructing us to report to the conference room the next day. Our phones were taken and placed in locked bins at the door. The head of HR stood at the front with 2 detectives. Her face looked hollow. "You're here," she said, her voice unsteady, "because you've used the East changing room in the last 5 years." One of the detectives said, "This morning we discovered hidden surveillance equipment inside this facility. The cameras were placed behind the walls of the staff changing room. They were positioned to capture full visibility of the mirror, benches, and floor-level angles." The room was completely silent. "These cameras were active and recording. We believe they've been operating since the building was last renovated. That was before anyone in this room had even worked here." Then the detective showed us security camera footage from Christmas Eve, when our office building should have been closed. It was Greg, unlocking the side door with his personal keycard and entering the dressing room with a toolbox in his hand. We watched him check the cameras and the cables, adjusting a few angles before he packed up and left. We were stunned and horrified, but that wasn't even the worst of it. The detectives told us that Greg hadn't just been recording us. He'd been selling us. They had found dozens of drives hidden in a fireproof safe in Greg's attic during their search last night. They recovered hundreds of labeled files, organized by employee name and date. Some had been uploaded to private servers, others had been sold. Several transactions were traced to foreign IP addresses. They also found a list of employees who had appeared most frequently in the footage. Alongside each name were notes, disturbingly specific observations like "Wears low ponytail, laughs at my jokes, talks to me like a daughter, and wears bright colors after lunch." What shattered me wasn't just seeing my name on that list, it was reading the words beside it. "She trusts me with everything, no boundaries." I remembered the conversations I'd had with Greg after long shifts, the tears I'd shed in his office when a client situation hit too close to home. I remembered him offering tissues, nodding like he understood. I thought he cared when really he was cataloging me to be sold. The nonprofit relocated and restructured after that. They issued statements when Greg was sentenced to 20 years in prison and brought in trauma counselors, but none of it undid what he'd done. Women who knew he'd been connected with us no longer trusted us to keep them safe, and how could we blame them? He found a group of people who wanted to help the most vulnerable members of our community and used our warmth against us. He once told me, "You remind me of my daughter," and I'm sure I did. Now every time someone calls me empathetic, I wonder if they see it as an opening. Because at a place where we gave everything to help survivors, the man who claimed to protect us was feeding our trust to the highest bidder.